Okay, I'm JC Harmon, and I'm from Vail, Oregon. Been from Eastern Oregon most of my life. I've been worked in the Northwest in Nevada and Washington and Idaho and Oregon throughout my career, but mostly Eastern Oregon's been my home. My experience in working in ranches and feedlots is pretty diverse. I started out as a young cowboy on a cow-calf operation for my grandpa, and then early in high school working for the neighbors, and I got sent for the summer at cow camp with the cows on kind of a camp job. And then as I progressed there and was in Eastern Oregon in a pretty diverse area, I found that the feedlot was a good way to keep my horses going and be a part of the cowboy in the wintertime. So I actually ended up with a pretty diverse work ethic in both cow-calf and the feedlot. And then as an older man, when I got to try and have my own cows and my own place, we got into marketing the cattle and finishing cattle and delivering them and all of the aspects from the baby calf all the way to meat on the rail. So pretty diverse. So the first paying job I had working for a ranch was a cow-calf operation, and they sent me just going with the other cowboys to just ride through cattle and from pasture move from one place to another. It was a really good environment to learn. I wouldn't say I had the best mentors horsemanship-wise to begin with, but they were all great cowmen, and so that was my first really getting my feet wet at cowboy. So today we're going to talk about if you were hired to come help us for the day and what you're expected to know when you get there. We expect you to show up, have the transportation to get there, have your own horse or the arrangements for that horse, one or another. It's not that the ranch doesn't have horses, but and we'll get that to it in a minute, I guess, with our checklist as to what you need to know. But when you get a horse back, you're going to need to be able to read a cow. You're going to be able to have to ride the horse safely and go through those types of things that need to be done with the cow and the horse safely throughout the day in an efficient manner. And so I know that's pretty vague, but really the rest of it's coachable. So I'm not expecting you to be the world's best cowboy in the world, but at the same point, there's a safety issue there. If you can do the work, if you can, you can get on the horse safely, picking the right horse, picking the right dog for the day, all those things will come into play. But we expect you to be able to rein your horse both directions, be able to stop him and back him up, and to be able to get the cow in the right place with that horse in a safe manner. So that's probably the most important thing. If I was to pay you $200 a day, I'd like to think that you could read a cow, that you could help rope a cow, or at least be able to work the ground when we get a cow under control to get the work done and the task and the duties for the day. So that's about what it would roll down to if you were doing day work on a ranch on a cow-calf outfit or a feedlot. Okay, so the next question follows up really good with the first thing we were talking about. If you were hired for the day to do day work, and this is your checklist the night before, and I would probably answer this with a question or several questions actually, in the fact that you need to know where you're going, and the arrangements to get there. So in our cowboying world, there's not always a GPS address you can put in your phone or a pin. So this is something that Wade and I have struggled with, just getting there. Okay, so good, proper directions, whether that includes a map or somebody that's been there before, making those arrangements the night before, so that alleviates the stress in the morning, so you can be punctual, be on time. So the other checklist we would do is, like, I would want to know from the boss what type of a day it is, so I know what horse to pick. If we're sorting cattle in the alley, I'm going to pick a horse that's pretty bridled up and can handle cattle and flight zones in a pretty abrupt manner. If we're throwing a great big circle, then I don't want to take a little bitty 2-year-old that can't make the whole day. Or maybe it is a 2-day kind of a deal. There's going to be a horse trailer in the middle where we have lunch. I can take 2 head of horses. But all those arrangements are something you want to take the stress off your employer and your coworkers, and carpooling arrangements or whatever, to make sure that checklist is there. You don't want to take the wrong dog. When you're day working, don't take your puppy with you for the day, or your colt if it's not ready for the job. You want to do those steps way ahead of time. Who's in charge of lunch? Do I need to pack a lunch? What kind of are we staying the night? Do I need a bedroll? All of those things, are some questions that you could ask at the beginning of the day, and I think will really help you to be that $200 kind of a day work kind of a guy.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so what a neat question here, because I think you're going to get a different answer from absolutely everyone. And one of the reasons why I think what Wade's teaching you guys is a really good idea, to stay open-minded, so that when you come across different employers and how they do things and how they want things done, it'll really help you. But these were some of the things that I probably would have got a little bit in trouble for when I learned Buckaroo, and did get in trouble for, and which leads to the next question, is exactly what I wish I would have known before I started, 10 years later. But the first thing I wrote on here was to belittle someone to motivate them. Or in our culture, we tend to be awful cliquey. You get one from one clique to the other, but a lot of times, the silent treatment or belittling somebody or getting after them in that sort of way to motivate them is just is going to make them shut down. And I think this translates into our herdsmanship and our cowmanship and our horsemanship too. I think if we're training in a loving way, or we're able to explain things in a way that we can understand it and speak their language, if you will, I think you're going to have good communication skills, which is really going to make you apart from other people to get to that $200 a day mark when you're day working. Speed was one of the things I wrote down. I think as a young person, we get that working cow horse mentality where we want to run something down the fence and blast it around, and it looks cool and that's fun and dandy. But the fastest way to get most things done with the cow is slow down. And I think it translates in our horsemanship too. I think, the timing is obviously huge, but slowing down things and doing an efficient job is getting a lot more work done than just, and then trying to get through it and then going and doing your thing for the rest of the day. That falls into your pressure release thing, I think, just too. The third thing I wrote down was pulling on his head. I think, I had a guy tell me one time as I was really fighting a horse to get in the trailer, he said, he just walked up to me and said, just fight him, everyone else does. And I think that was probably the biggest lesson of my life in my horsemanship is that, there's a time and a place to pick that fight, and your timing and your release and your horsemanship is really important. It says just as much as it is with a cow. When you're going somewhere, there's a release or a let go there, and I think we're trying to force things way too much in there, so that's kind of why I wrote that down. Being punctual, being on time, not making people wait on you. There's a lot of things that need to get done for the day, and a lot of times a lot of those guys, after they're done with you, they've got to go do a whole nother set of chores when they get done. And so if you say you're going to be somewhere there, that falls right into one of my other things I wrote down, and that's making your word good. I think it's important that when you say something, you're going to do it. We get to be a little bit wishy-washy in our generation. Plans change and this and that and the other, but I think if you stick by what you said you were going to do, you're going to have a lot of luck in building relationships, and this is a game of relationships. You might sell that guy a horse someday, or you might be in a cow deal there, or a grass deal that's really important to your operation. So, distracted fellowship. I've kept this in my hand just for this. When I'm visiting with somebody, or I'm trying to make a business deal, and all of a sudden your phone rings and you answer it, or you look at a text message, or you're distracted, in that sense, it's just as bad as distracted driving. You've already told that person you don't respect them anymore. And I think that's something we're missing in this generation. And so I think that, if you want to build a relationship with an employer, and then, put your phone on vibrate and put it in your pocket, and when it goes off, just leave it in your pocket. There's always a time later where you can get that phone out and catch back up with that information, but don't make a person feel like that there's something more important in your pocket that you can't just get over with in that simple conversation. This is kind of a funny one. I was struggling actually to come up with 10 of them. I guess I'm getting more patient in my old age, because I could have wrote 50 of these down when I was 19, I guess. But a sheep herder's twist. You walk up to a fence and you'll see somebody didn't take the time to stretch the wire or fix the fence, and so they'll just grab a hold of their pliers and twist it in two, and it'll freeze and thaw in the spring or the winter, that fall, and it'll be a broken wire there next year. And as I'm older and got our own outfits and have to go back and fix those problems, that was always a pet peeve of mine. So, telling someone to do something instead of asking, and showing me that you can do it rather than telling me you can do it. I think there's a lot of us, especially in the horse world, that like to tell us right off the bat how our horses are bred and how good we are and all this sort of stuff. But I think you cloud up a lot of really important fellowship in building that relationship to begin with, before you ever needed to say anything about that. You can say a lot with what you do and how you act. And I think it translates into our hands and our releases with our cows and horses too. I think you can tell with your hands instead of ask. And I think if you guy will learn the difference, you'll progress a lot faster in what you're trying to do with this day work and this horsemanship and this swordsmanship. My dad was always big about gates. You left the gate how you found it, whether it was shut or open or folded back, and you dang sure never climbed over the latch side. You always climbed over the hinge side so you weren't bending it up. And when you're in the feedlot, and you guy out there is a full-time job keeping all those gates tuned up. And if you ever work somewhere where the gates are really nice and you can handle them all on horseback, why, somebody worked really hard to get them that way. And then, on a ranch outfit, I think it's just important that you could really mess things up. If you're hunting or out there just cowboying and you don't shut a gate, or you don't leave a gate open and somebody comes to it that really needed to be open with a wild cow, you're probably going to hear about it. So, and the 10th one was ride for the brand. Not only just who you're working for that day, but the health and vigor and of the actual animal. They're not just flesh and meat. You're riding a horse that deserves respect there, and if you've got him legged up and in the right shape for the day, then that's great. But if you can take care of that animal both in nutrition and health wise there, and then also just you're kind of almost out there, and if you see a baby calf in trouble, you guys should have the same incentive as the guy that owns the calf. That feeling should come across to you, and if you don't, I think you're probably just not invested in really passionate about being a herdsman or cowboying, because it should come across to you that way. So that was my top 10. So this will be interesting because it might not be quite related to what a lot of people said, just because a lot of people's mentors were horse trainers or ranchers or just really good cowboys. But my dad and my grandpa were both kind of politicians at heart and teachers, hence my personality, I guess. But they had an importance about shaking a guy's hand and looking him in the eyes, and about building relationships, and about taking time with somebody that was on the side of the road broke down, or if it was somebody just needed a conversation in a grocery store. But they must have drove my grandma and my mom nuts, because they were never on time to get back in the pickup. But now that I'm older, I see the value in that relationship time, both with clients and people that I work for and work with. And if you'll take a minute with just about anybody you come across, not only can you change their day, but you can change yours. Okay, so this is kind of a fun one in the fact that this would be my advice to someone that was just kind of starting out in either the equine industry or ranching. And I would say, that to stay open-minded, there's more than a way. There's lots of ways to get the job accomplished, and you're going to see that as you go along there. And being open-minded is going to help you to do things not maybe necessarily the way you were taught to do them, but the way that's most efficient. And then you can take all of those things and then make your way. So you'll learn a little bit from this guy and a little bit from this guy, and those pieces will start to put together, and it'll help you to tackle horses and problems as they come along there that may require a different situation each time. Each horse and cow is a little bit different, and each operation that you come to is a little bit different. And so you may not use that method today, but you'll come across a problem in the next time around where you'll understand why they did it the way that they did it, and I think that'll really help you.
Perfect.
So probably one of the things that I really wish I would have learned earlier is tack. I actually got mentored by a guy that was a reiner, and that's a heck of a snaffle bit guy. I could probably ride every horse that I ride all day long, for the next 10 years in a snaffle bit, and think I was just fine. I really am comfortable at that stage and progressing in the bridle, and that passion didn't come until later in my life. But the biggest thing for me was saddles. When I started really getting on to those bigger buckaroo outfits and having to trot those big circles, I'd been in this cold upper mountain country and didn't really have mentors that were really particular about full double rig cinches or the way I'd pad a horse and stuff. And so when I really learned how to sweat a horse, so I didn't make any dry spots on him, or so I could make him last longer, or really start to respect a horse, like I talked about earlier about riding for the brand and kind of taking care of your horse flesh and your cow flesh in a health and vigor standpoint. Man, I could have been just way more efficient as a young man and taking care of those things earlier, And Wade and I have talked about this a bunch with our feet and our legs and our horseshoeing. You know, we'd be just a little bit lazy at getting that second set of shoes on, you know, and get a bit long, and you know, you'd get a little bit stretched in the tendon or not feel so good in the back or in the loins there or something like that. And that wisdom comes later in life, but man, if you could capture that as an early guy and learn how to sweat a horse correctly and take care of his feet and legs, you can be way more efficient and make a horse last a lot longer in your life. Okay, so this is an easy question for me, obviously, because I chose this way of life to make a family and to raise kids, and because my grandpa told me that if I could find something that I could do that I enjoyed doing, I would actually never go to work a day in my life. And so this is an easy one for me. You know, I think that if you're smart and really manage your money correctly, and you have a little bit of luck on your sides, maybe some blessings, you could make a little bit of money, especially the way this horse market is these days. But there's way easier roads to make a lot of money if that's what you really want. It's not dang sure not the best way to go about this if that's what's behind your drive. But if you're passionate about and you love working with a young horse or working with a cow or you know, just feeding your country, man, there's a lot of things about agriculture that have nothing to do with being a cowboy. But if you're passionate about any of these areas in the ranch or equine industry, you'll never go to work a day in your life, and that's worth a lot more than your bank account will ever say.